Hey, so I'm Lovell, and this is my 1992 Mountain States Ford Ranger, and this is what I've done to it. So the front axle is from a 1977 Ford F-150. The rear axle is from a 1981 Ford. I got this worn winch on here. I built this whole front bumper. The light bar is off of a Ford Raptor that my dad used to have. All this steering is just old race parts. All these rod ends are off of my dad's Ultra 4 car that are all used. This tie rod used to be a grind rail that we used to use for our BMX bikes, and it's worked out pretty nicely. The shocks are from a 2018 Polaris 1000. They've done pretty nice and they've held up well. The rock sliders I have here are off of a 2022 Ford Bronco. They've been super strong, and I found a way to get those in there. I think they match up pretty nice. I like that they don't come out super far, and they're in a triangle shape, so I have the point of the triangle sitting on the bottom, so that adds a little bit more support too. The body on this thing is super cut up. I love that they're all cut up high and that it just looks like an aggressive truck. One of the big things that I had to do to this truck that was a requirement was some sort of roll bar or roll cage. I got that built. I pulled it through into the cab up here, and it just runs down to my frame rails. So on the bed here, this was a long bed Ford Ranger. To get a better departure angle for dropping off rocks, I set up a laser and I cut 14 inches out of it and welded the back of the bed back onto it, and it makes it look a lot better, but for performance aspects, you get that better departure angle when you're dropping off rocks. You don't have your bumper sticking all the way out here. You can pull it in a lot closer. Just get that departure angle a lot nicer. The leaf springs are 64-inch springs found on some of their trucks. They work a lot better on this because they're longer and you can get more travel out of them. The shackles and everything I built myself. The axle was $103 at the junkyard. The rear bumper is just some box tube and a street sign that I found. One of the more recent things that I've built for this truck is a transmission crossmember and bushing. The stock crossmember hung down super low. It was super bulky, so I built something that sits up a little bit higher so I'm not going to catch it on as many rocks. The bushing is from a Bronco Raptor trailing arm length, and I built a little holder for it and then another mount that goes up on the transmission, and it's turned out a lot nicer than the stock bushing. One of the things that I built for this that hasn't worked out quite as expected was this wristed radius arm. Generally on these Fords, you'll have your axle that runs across here and you'll have your links that grab onto the front axle, and when that flexes out, these change angles and are looking up and down. So that kind of acts like a sway bar, which was nice, but it didn't let it flex out, and that's something that this truck needs to be able to do. So if you make one of these wristed and able to flex, you can have it change with the axle as it goes through its motion. With the link in, it would kind of kink the radius arm over and wouldn't work too well, so I took the link out, and it works just fine with the link out. It sways a little bit more driving it on the road, but I'm gonna come up with something better for that, and I'm gonna see what I can do. I got a smoking deal on this truck and I got it for 800 bucks. It didn't start and it didn't want to run. The guy I bought it from said that it was seized. Once I got this thing home and got it in the shop, I got it turned over and everything. To fit these Fox shocks, I did have to build shock hoops and an engine cross member and everything for that. I had to do an intake on this. The mass airflow sensor body is from a Ford Thunderbird. The intake used to sit over here, so I had to run that over here. The coolant tank, I was gonna build one until I was shopping on Amazon, and I found one for 35 bucks. It's an aluminum tank, it's got a nice sight line. One thing that I have changed about the engine, I guess, is doing a bigger radiator. Having this winch up here and this light bar, it blocks a lot of airflow. Obviously, you still need airflow, so doing a bigger radiator isn't gonna solve all your issues, but a radiator that's a little over 2 times as big as the stock one is gonna help a little bit. But other than that, it's just a stock truck. I haven't done anything to the engine, to the transmission, to the transfer case. That's how I'd like to keep it, because You know, all those parts were built to work together, so they shouldn't have problem continuing to work together. The only other real issues I've had with the engine, when you're rock crawling, it's nice to just be able to start the truck in gear if you're doing a rock climb, so you can just get out of there. I jumped my clutch wires, and I found out the hard way that the neutral position sensor on the clutch does a few more things than just tell the engine if the clutch is in. It also tells your fuel pump to do a couple things. It was really hard to understand, but I got that figured out, and that threw me for a loop because it would run, but it would run super, super rich. So I went through all my sensors up on my intake here, and they were all working good and stuff. So I headed back down to where I was working on my clutch and dug through that wiring. Those are really the only issues that I've had with this. On the inside of this thing, I've kind of just made it how I wanted to. It used to have a bench seat in it. I found a matching driver's side seat at the junkyard and a console, so I went ahead and put that in. There's like nowhere to put anything inside of this thing because it's so small in here, so it's nice to have the console. I had to cut up the roof a little bit back here so that I could fit this roll bar. I've mounted a fire extinguisher back here. I put an intercom in here so we can have communications while we're on the trail with other vehicles. I built this little panel up here so later on I can put some manual switches in for my winch. Manual door locks, manual windows. It's super basic, super simple, and it all holds up pretty nice. I don't quite know how much I've spent on this truck, but I definitely know that the wheels and tires alone probably cost more than I've spent on everything else on this truck. You know, it really helps having my dad, who's done a lot of racing for a lot of years, so there's a lot of parts stashed away in the shop, and it's fun to walk around the shop and go shopping for all those good parts and, you know, find those gems that are tucked away in a dusty corner. That's definitely what my brother and I have done, so that's what's kind of allowed us to build these trucks, is just using secondhand parts. I think the end goal for this thing is probably something close to just a super toned down ultra Ford car with a cab on it. It's definitely a long ways away, but we're on our way.